Something truly terrible has happened. A YouTuber I really enjoy, Man Carrying Thing, did a video criticizing another YouTuber I really enjoy, The Critical Drinker. It was about a video the drinker did on masculinity on screen a year or two ago, a subject that really interests me, so naturally I was all of a dither.
There are times since I felt like the child born of those two fathers.
The Drinker's premise was largely about ideological influences on depictions of masculinity within studios and writing rooms. Man Carrying Thing argued there were more sensitive and serious aspects deserving of attention about the state of masculinity in general.
On January 13th, 2023, the popular review channel The Critical Drinker posted a video called Why Modern Movies Suck - They Hate Men. Ever since watching this, I've been consumed by a need to talk about it. This has 2.9 million views. Clearly it resonates with me, mainly because it explains so much of what I hate about the discourse surrounding men and male loneliness and the masculinity crisis, whatever you want to call it.
To quell the disturbance and restore the breach, I'm going to try and sort out this whole men are kind of frustratingly pussyish on screen nowadays discussion on my own terms. To figure it all out, we have to go back a few decades and look at something that developed in academic theory, and how this merged with the MeToo movement, leading to an era where male archetypes came under heavy scrutiny by screenwriters looking to shake things up, many of whom think they're more culturally literate than the rest of us. Here's what happened. Post-1990s feminist theory framed gender not as a fixed natural truth, but as a learned behavior, as performance held up by societal expectations. This laid the theoretical groundwork for viewing masculinity as something constructed, and thus something that could be deconstructed. In Gender Trouble 1990, Judith Butler argues, gender proves to be performance. There is no gender identity behind the expressions of gender. Judith Lorber wrote on the constructed nature of sex and gender. Bodies differ physiologically, but they are completely transformed by social practices to fit into salient categories. Gendered people do not emerge from physiology, but from the exigencies of the social order. Professor Bell Hooks wrote, whether we're talking about race or gender or class, popular culture is where the learning is, saying that gender performance is internalized through media and institutions. This social constructivist academic stuff was mostly confined to campuses. Then, in 2017, the MeToo movement exploded. There was an urgent desire for accountability, redress, and change. Post-2017, MeToo, with its backlash against gender inequality, became spiked with social constructivist ideas about gender itself. Representation, visibility, and gender dynamics on screen began to change. The Marvels. Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi is transformed from mythic hero to bitter, broken relic, ultimately displaced by Rey, the archetypal girl boss, endowed with greatness, absent of struggle. Rings of Power's Galadriel is no longer regal and wise, but self-righteous and vengeful. Female characters not so much flawed or individuated as symbolically empowered. The result? Low stakes, low engagement, low rewatchability. The hero's journey flattened into an empowerment parable. She was always enough, she just had to be recognized. Challenging systemic abuses in this mindset meant challenging the emotional and psychological architecture that supported it. If gender roles are performative, then deconstructing those roles and any kind of masculine mythos can be seen as cathartic. Visibility on screen became less outcomes of audience interest or merit. Much of the mythic resonance of storytelling was left out. A lot of popular culture became a battlefield of symbols. With big studio films, people are watching two narratives at the same time these days. The story itself and some other unpleasant, vaguely unsettled other narrative buzzing just beyond. Cultural and gender positioning and writer self-inserts and ideas. Is this character leaning towards being a Mary Sue? Is that character getting talked over? Does this dialogue feel stilted and preachy? Is this character a passenger in his own show? Is that character constantly rescuing that other one? It's a retentive new dynamic, and it sucks because good storytelling should be transportive.
I'm disappointed in your species.
The outcomes were cultural malaise and an audience drift, low box office and streaming interest, and fewer cultural must-sees. There's a kind of background attitude among many contemporary screenwriters. If traditional traits in men like stoicism, emotional reserve, dry wit, ambition, and not abiding any histrionics were to the fore back in times when things were worse for women, then there would likely be a negative association with those characteristics. Once you buy into that premise, traditionally masculine traits can start to look problematic. Reservedness starts to look like emotional repression. Charisma, a little like coercion. Even something like irony starts to feel like a form of avoidance or evasion. Romantic assertiveness has power dynamics. But this is a bad linkage. It confuses correlation with causation. You can have stoicism without distance. You can have ambition without chauvinism. You can have strength without repression. And more importantly, society can evolve beyond male dominance to a state of parity while still holding up and valuing aspects of masculinity that are grounding and admirable. This dismantling of masculine archetypes isn't framed as punitive. In the minds of Los Angeles-based screenwriters in their 20s and 30s, what they're offering is a kind of emotional upgrade for men. Role models who are more expressive, ideally kind of gender neutral. The classic traits that used to delineate a cool guy from a tedious one, dry wit, self-containment, a sense of magnetism, have been replaced by a blandly convivial, soft-spoken archetype. This is the crucial thing a million guys online haven't quite grasped. These writers don't see themselves as misandrist or man-haters. They believe they're crafting a masculinity that is less adrenalized, less sexualized, less status-obsessed, a post-social construct masculinity, one that's more settled, more emotionally fluent, more centered. And when gender differences abate, there'll be less tension, less rivalry, less sexual confusion. Harmony will displace hierarchy. Equality will displace eros. That's why the backlash, the neckbeards, the dude bros, the ratioing, downvoting, review bombing, video making guys, isn't taken seriously. In the eyes of these writers, that online crowd are not just wrong about gender swaps of legacy characters and strong female ones. They're still trapped in their old programming. Their opinions don't need rebuttal, they just need alleviation. Their grievances can be brushed off or high-mindedly abided through. And the bitter irony is this. The modern girl boss they offer in exchange is itself a phony construct. Not escapist, not mythic, but doctrinaire and dull. There is also a whole bunch of hypocrisies, the worst of which is that gender essentialism gets dragged back in if feminist auteurs want to make a pithy point. For example, the film Woman Talking, nominated for an Oscar no less, is steeped in gender essentialism. That misogyny is hardwired, even in young adolescents. So the women living in a commune fear that they shouldn't take pubescent boys with them when they abscond, because those pubescents have within them the incorrigible poison of misogyny and sexual threat as their nature. All of this conveyed with unsettling, lingering shots of young boys in overalls gazing vacantly back at the camera. Debbie Downer, killjoy, wrist-slapping, flat tire, dull as dishwater, spirit-flagging, meddling. As Friedrich Schiller observed, mit der Dummheit kämpfen Goethe selbst Würgebins. Or, against stupidity, the gods themselves contend in vain. Scandinavian countries like Norway, Sweden, and Denmark are known for progressive gender equality policies. Equal parental leave for men and women, strong anti-discrimination laws, public campaigns to combat gender stereotypes, state-funded early childhood education aimed at neutralizing social conditioning. The underlying theory was social constructivism, that gender differences in behavior, career choices, and personality traits are largely, or entirely, the result of socialization, not biology. If you eliminate the social and institutional pressures shaping people into men and women, you should, in theory, see more gender convergence, especially in professional outcomes and lifestyle preferences. What actually happened was the opposite. The more egalitarian the society, the more pronounced the gender differences became. In countries like Norway and Sweden, women were more likely to choose traditionally feminine fields like nursing and education, and men were more likely to choose STEM fields. more so than in less gender-equal countries. A documentary questioned why, after decades of social engineering, men and women still made different life choices. The film led to the eventual defunding of Norway's Gender Equality Institute after it was accused of ignoring or dismissing biological factors in its research. Now, it seems, the age of know-it-all screenwriters with these latent ideas may be passing, or at least we've endured the worst. For the record, I'm mostly castigating big mainstream entertainment. As it happens, my favorite films of the last 3 or 4 years are After Sun, Anatomy of a Fall, and K-pop Demon Hunters. Ha! Gay! If there's one thing the far left is prone to doing, which drives center-left people up the wall, it is their habit, every single time, of taking a legitimate moment of social and societal reckoning and completely screwing it up by shoveling in piles of ideology, scope creep, and proposing bad faith overcorrections. This is more or less what happened in Hollywood. Legitimate grievance sprawled and surged and made a whole bunch of other stuff permissible. It looks like we're undergoing some kind of correction. Man Carrying Thing is one of my favorite YouTubers. In the squalid slush of cyberspace, people are going to contest one another, which is fine. But perhaps some valid questions to ask are, would we say the overwhelming majority are satisfied or pleased by the depictions of masculinity in mainstream entertainment? Or does there feel like some abstract disconnect, some lack, that a lot of mainstream dudes feel, even if they might not be able to articulate it? And if there is a yearning among many for more discernible masculine proclivities and characters on screen, that doesn't have to mean some kind of stubborn, reactionary mindset with insecurities welling beneath. It might just mean we like to see that stuff. You can advocate for a more nuanced, holistic look at masculinity, and you can also gripe about a perceived pussification of men on screen. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. By the way, just before I go, you can now find me over on Substack, where, in addition to my spluttering ramblings on popular culture, you can also find a plethora of articles on politics, society, and the wider world. But don't worry, my signature tone of disagreeable, curmudgeonly cynicism, with occasional bright spots of misguided optimism, perhaps because I was born foolish, abides there as well. If you think you'd like to sign up for a free subscription, it would really help out a lot. The link is in the description.